Happy Monday to you. We're still in the book of Exodus, and I wanted to say one thing before we move on to the second part of the Ten Commandments. God didn't need to rest because he was tired. God stopped to sanctify a day of rest and spiritual renewal for man. I think it's important for us to remember that God doesn't get tired. It's a good thing he doesn't, because of the number of people in the world and because of the amount of strain we put upon him, or sometimes with our actions. But nevertheless, God didn't rest because he was tired. He rested to set aside a day of spiritual renewal and physical renewal for mankind. So we've gone through the four of the commandments that have to do with our relationship to God. And we've made that clear that that is a relationship. But God's not just concerned about our relationship with him. He's also concerned about our relationship with others. And so the last 6 of the 10 commandments deal with our relationship with others. The first one of those is found in verse 12, which is honor your father and mother. Now that doesn't mean any kind of absolute control from a father and mother standpoint, especially after you've left their home. But it does mean to honor and respect them as your parents and the ones that poured into you and supported you during the time that you were being raised. My mother left us when I was about 12 years of age, hurt my father deeply and hurt our family deeply. But I had to come to a place as a Christian to forgive her and to continue to honor her as my mother. Some of you may find yourself in that situation. Your father was not a good example, or your mother was not a good example, and now you have a tendency to speak down about them or to show them disrespect, and God doesn't want that. We'll never win them over to Christ or to change whatever shortcomings we may have found in them by doing that kind of disrespectful treatment. And so our command is to honor them, to show them the respect. And the 13th verse talks about do not murder. That's the taking of a life. Now, I think it's really important, since it appears that Roe versus Wade is going to be overturned, that we certainly need to understand the difference between euthanasia, suicide, and abortion. We have, in the case of euthanasia, if a person takes their life because there's no quality of life, then we say that's a humane thing. We do it for pets. Why shouldn't we do it for humans? It is perfectly understandable when it is the choice of the person who is taking their own life. It's not acceptable, according to scriptures, for us to not trust God and to take our own life through suicide or euthanasia. Euthanasia, when forced upon somebody just because they're no longer a productive part of society, is murder. And the taking of a child's life inside the body of a woman is murder. There's no say on the part of the baby, and there's no say on the part of the elderly person whose life is taken against their will. So we have a very clear line of definition. I don't know why so many people struggle with it. We have a clear line of definition. The willful taking of somebody else's life versus someone that commits suicide, or someone who decides that they need to end their life or terminate their life because of the quality of life, which is their will. Now, it's certainly my professional and spiritual position that we should never stop trusting God so that we take and commit suicide, or that we use euthanasia to terminate our lives. But I wanted to make that distinct difference between the willfully taking of somebody else's life versus somebody taking their own life. And so I just don't understand when women's rights people say, well, you're taking away the right of a woman. Uh, that may be so as far as uh, taking away the right to kill an unborn child. But I think that's a lot different than saying you can't use contraceptives, you can't abstain from sex, you have to bear all the children you can possibly bear. I think there's a big difference, and it's not a right to kill. Somebody made a joke not long ago on the internet. While it's a joke, I hope, it is probably not a bad idea to think about. I can't murder my wife because I don't want to be married anymore, and I shouldn't murder a baby because I don't want to bring a baby into this world. I think that there's a very clear distinction here. And so we have verse 13, thou shalt not murder. Verse 14, thou shalt not commit adultery. Once again, here we are violating not just our desire, not just somebody else's desire, but we're interfering with a third person's covenant relationship with someone. And so we have a very clear delineation here of adultery. And I think fornication is very clearly a moral act that is clearly defined in the Scripture as being an immoral act because it involves a union that was designed for being inside of a marriage. Finally, we have in verse 15, stealing. We have no right to take that which belongs to someone else. I don't care how careless they were with that possession. I don't care if they got it improperly. It doesn't belong to us, and we have no right to take it. Verse 16, don't bear false witness against someone else. That's very clear, isn't it? It actually violates their rights by you having you told an untruth, something that is not truthful about them, which causes others to get the wrong impression about that person. And so bearing false witness against another can often be nothing more than gossip that you have decided to spread without any knowledge of truth. And I think sometimes we define false witness as someone that sits in a jury chair and deliberately lies about whether somebody did or didn't do something. However, I think that when we rumor things that we don't know for a fact, it is still bearing false witness against another. So I think we need to be very careful with our tongues. And then finally, verse 17, coveting. Coveting is something that a lot of people have confused with just admiring something. You can admire somebody's house, boat, car. You can even say that you'd love to have one someday. But having one of your own someday is different than wanting theirs. And so when we look at coveting, notice how God has taken and brought the illustration out in a lot of detail where he says, you're not to covet your neighbor's house or his wife or his male servant or his female servant or his donkey or anything that belongs to someone else. Here the key word is covet, which is to desire, desire, to hope or wish or to long for or to crave, enviously, wishing it was yours. Not that one would like it was yours, but wishing that theirs was yours. And so I hope that may clear up any coveting versus admiring or hoping someday to have something comparable to it, but wishing to have somebody else's is wrong. Sin. So we have the Ten Commandments. I hope we brought some sensibility to them. I hope that it didn't confuse you. But I think that it's important for us to understand that while God gave us these way back in the book of Exodus, he also brought about a reality through Jesus in the New Testament that these are the letter of the law, but Jesus brought spirit to the law. If we wish so strongly that we find ourselves having a relationship with someone else's wife in our minds, that it's the same thing as committing the act. We've desired it so much that we've fantasized it into something that we wish for ourselves, and that obviously is sinful. And Jesus made clear that it's not just the letter of the law, it's the whole spirit of the law. And that's my thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.